I just say I like your room. Looks really nice.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, I like the pictures in the background and so on.
Yeah, well, me and my wife, we just did them like, I think about a year ago. We do this free painting thing where we're not allowed to paint any shapes or numbers or any kind of designs.
Wow.
And you start at three colors and you just paint whatever comes up. And
Fantastic.
1 hour later, you turn the painting around and then you just keep continuing. And
that's a great idea.
Weird stuff comes out. All right, let's go. 3, 2, 1, action. All right, ladies and gents, welcome to, this will be probably part of season 2, or it could be episode 5 of the Courage Diaries. My name is Empowery, and I've got a very, very special guest today. It's not every day that you get to interview one of your favorite authors. And today I have with me Mr. Glyn Iliffe, who writes historical fantasy, which is, I guess, 2 of my favorite genres of books put together. He wrote an amazing 6 books on the Trojan War from the perspective of Odysseus, which was absolutely a dream. And I really recommend reading it. Even if you know Homer by heart, you've not heard a version like this. And what was even more engaging was the little trilogy on Heracles, who happens to be one of my favorite heroes, and whose name, unfortunately, I cannot give to my baby because my wife doesn't agree, but that's another story for another day. So, guys, so Mr. Glyn, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you. Yeah, I'm ready to go.
All right.
Really interested in talking with you about whatever you've got to ask me.
Fantastic. I guess the first question would be, what made you decide to come onto the show?
Well, your invite, which was a great start. But I just like to chat with people. I really like to chat with people who've read the books and who are interested in them. And it's a good opportunity to tell other people a bit about what I write and who I am and why I write these things and so on. And I thought the subject that you've picked about courage is a really interesting one. I think it's something that has so many facets to it. So it's quite a challenge.
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, in most of your books, courage has always been one of the underlying themes in the series. So I thought it would be interesting to know what it means to you. Like, what does courage mean to you, by the way?
It means a lot of things, really. Obviously, there's your physical courage. And I've had a few examples of that sort of, I don't know whether it's always courage. You've probably read on the back page of the book that I did the running of the bulls in Pamplona and actually I was tossed by a bull. I actually got caught by a bull and thrown in the air and landed shoulder first and broke my collarbone. So, but that I think was probably more to do with youthful bravado and a bit of alcohol and some friends who were egging me on. So, that was stupidity rather than courage and ignorance. Courage can sometimes be ignorance, can't it? You don't know what you're going into and you just do it. Other things I've done were hitchhiking across the States. That's also on the back of the book. Now that took a bit of self-confidence, and because you really do meet some strange people sometimes and some dangerous people as well. I won't go into the detail, but there are a few people who, one person I had to demand that I leave the car because he was just not a person I wanted to share a car journey with. That said, though, 95% of the people were absolutely fantastic. It was a great experience. And that's the sort of thing. If you've got the courage to do something that everybody tells you is crazy, to hitchhike across the States, all those people with guns and in cults and all these sorts of things. And I did meet a few people, a couple of people who are in cults, but anyway, it's sometimes you've got to think, well, I can not do that. I can just go on greyhounds everywhere or trains, but actually going and doing it was something that really opened my eyes to, Americans, the States, it was a real it was a fantastic experience. If I'd have gone on a bus to all over the States, it would have been nothing like the same. It was great to be in cars with these people and take the risk. And I had some brilliant experiences. I wish I had the time to tell you some of these things, but yeah, so that was courage. That was good. When I was younger, I joined the parachute regiment as a reservist, and that took real courage as well. I mean, there were 198 people signed up for the CARDA, and only 22 of us got through in the end. So, because they're one of these elite regiments, they're very hard on you. They really weed out the people who don't have, but that's a sort of a physical and a mental courage, because you've got to keep going through all the crap that they throw at you. You know, so that's another type of courage. But I think currently I'm going through a few things which are really difficult for me, which is unfortunately a marriage breakup. Okay, so this is something after 24 years of being together. It's quite difficult, and this takes a whole new type of courage. And I think perhaps the biggest sort of, because my wife and I have separated, she's taking the kids and I haven't seen them for months. It's a really tough. But the thing is, you need to look at yourself as well. I mean, you've got to have the courage to face yourself. It's easy to blame the other person. It's easy to stay as you are. And just reinforce yourself and hear what people say and say that you're, you know, it's her, it's not you, and all this. But actually, you know, you've got to stick. You've got to have that courage to look at yourself and say, no, you've done these things wrong, and you've got to have the courage to not go down the route of anger, bitterness, unforgiveness, all that sort of stuff. I'm not interested in any of that. I've seen too many lives eaten up by unforgiveness. You know, you probably know friends yourself, I'm sure. People who are watching this do, you know. And that's no way to. You've got to face yourself. You've got to keep putting down those bad feelings, and you've got to change yourself, and you've got to just face up to yourself. So having the courage to face yourself is perhaps the toughest thing I've ever done. So, and I'm still going through it. So.
I totally agree with you when you say this. And as someone who's personally struggled with also facing myself and, you know, the things that you just would rather hide in the closet, what's helped you to, I guess, take that step up to face what you don't really what you know you might not want to see?
Well, what's helped me to face those things? Well, honesty, I suppose. A bit like Heracles, the character in the Odysseus books, who's Odysseus's right-hand man, if you like. He has real integrity. I think that's the thing that I like about him. I grew to like him really quickly, actually, which is why he became, you know, the main character, really. Even Odysseus is the title character, but it's Heracles is the one that people root for because he's an unknown and he's you know, a fictional character. But he has real integrity. You know, he goes through a lot of rubbish. I think the best characters in books, the characters you really like, are the ones that get the most thrown at them. And though they can fall down, but do they pick themselves up? If they do, you're rooting for them more. And if they overcome these obstacles, and I think his greatest quality is not necessarily his strength, his skill. It's actually his integrity, his belief in honor, and just going forward like that. And I think that's partly what helps me a lot. Is because Heracles is obviously it's a bit like myself, if you like. So I've always had powerful integrity. I'm a Christian. I've been a Christian since I was 30, so that's 23 years ago, and that reinforces. I think that I was drawn to Christianity because it's got integrity and truth, and there's a lot of bad press about Christianity, but actually the core of it is something that's really powerful for me, really attractive, because it just calls upon you to make yourself answerable, to put selfishness aside, and, you know, do everything you can for the world around you and for the, you know, for the glory of God as a Christian. So that my faith and my personal integrity, and they both work together, has given me a lot of strength, and that strength and the courage to face, you know, my faults. You know, you may be a Christian, but actually most Christians are just faulty people who are trying to correct themselves. And, you know, I know what my faults are, and they've developed again, you know, they sort of, you can get through a period of life. I've had past 10 or 15 years, especially as marriage with the children, have been idyllic. I used to sit in the garden in the mornings before I'd start writing and doing my research or whatever. And I would just sort of thank God that I have such a lovely wife, such lovely kids. And then, yeah, but the thing is that you get lazy. You stop trying in a way. You just think, well, you know, you make mistakes, and these mistakes become habits, and, you know, those things are not good. So I let myself slip, and now I'm back into fighting for myself. And yeah, so I've got a lot of motives. Another motive, of course, is to fight for the restoration of my family. So
it's really powerful. It's
thank you.
As someone who's just starting a family, I think this is a really good reminder. Like, it's so easy to kind of just take things for granted because they're good, right? And then next thing you know, you slip on some black ice and boom. And it's incremental amounts of it, right? It's never just one big thing. It's always like, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Glyn, I want to ask you a bit of a strange question, but what else keeps you going when things get really hard? Like, is there something that you do, or?
Well, you look at what could be if you don't keep going. I mean, you may have read on my website, there's a page on the website which goes through all the trials I went through to be an author.
Yes, I read that yesterday. Wow.
Yeah, it's just, you think, sometimes I look at things like that and I think, why on earth do you just keep going?
Yeah.
Just briefly, for the sake of the people listening, I wanted to be an author since I was about 9. I started in earnest when I was about 16. I wrote 3 books which were, you know, youthful rubbish, but I learned a lot from it. And so I sent these things off, got loads of rejections all the time, and, you know, I was discouraged, of course, but I just kept going because I had this dream that I wanted to be an author. And it's really hard anyway. Anybody else who's tried writing a book is hard enough, but to get it published, I think it's like 0.25% of manuscripts get published, something like that. But the things that keep going, and then, you know, you get to a point where life takes over, other things come in, and then you return to that dream. It's having that in your heart, whatever your goals are, is being absolutely true to them and clinging on to them through everything, through all the crap, all the rejections. I mean, my first book that was published, King of Ithaca, the 4th book I've written, that had 38 rejections, which is, you know, how do you put up with that? Why don't you just throw it away? And it nearly got taken on by a big publisher, Hodder and Stoughton, and then their marketing people rejected it, saying there's no market for books on the ancient world. And then, maybe it was God, I don't know, but then the editor, 4 years later, who'd taken it on, came back and said, "You still got that book somewhere?" And that led to me being published by Pan Macmillan. But when I look back, and you know, it's been a really rocky road ever since. You know, it's ups and downs all the while. But why do you put up with it? Because I look at, what would I be without that? I would, you know, I had 20 years working in finance, actually, when I was writing as well. But, you know, that was the part-time thing. And finance, I can't think of anything more boring. When I was a kid, the last thing I wanted to be, I thought the worst job I could ever do would be an insurance clerk. I ended up working for an insurance company for 10 years. But the idea of giving up on your dreams and not being a writer, but just being something you don't want to be, whether it's an insurance clerk or whatever, it would be despair. You know, I'm letting myself down. You've always got to be true to yourself, and that's what keeps me going. Even now, you know, I haven't had a book published for about a year and a half because I've been working on a new book that has just been so difficult. I'm nearly at the end there now. I'm going to then try and find a publisher and so on. But so, you know, income has slipped, and now I've taken a new job as teaching assistant in a primary school, which I absolutely love, by the way. I recommend to anybody who loves kids, go and be a teaching assistant. It's brilliant. Yeah, it's just that through those hard times, you remember what's in your heart, you know, and just stick with it. And don't give up. Really don't give up. Just, you know, I've got a great ally. I've got God on my side. He's helped me a lot. But, you know, just believe that you can do it. And, you know, focus and so on, and you'll get there.
Wow. I think you answered every question I can possibly think of. Yeah, yeah, it's funny how a lot of what you said also resonates in a lot of the past interviews that I've done, especially in the last one, where it was a lot about believing in yourself, having the self-confidence to prove to yourself that you can do it. And what was interesting also in what's going to be released tomorrow, I've got a lady talking about the difference between bravery and courage, and what you talked about earlier with the bulls and versus doing something else. So that's also quite interesting. It's very touching. So Glyn, I know I promised you about 20 minutes, so we're closing up. Do you have any messages? If you could give one message to the audience before you close up, just one, what would it be?
Well, the theme is courage, isn't it?
Yes.
And I suppose that my experience of life, 53 years, not a lot compared to some, but more than many,
Mm-hmm.
is to say that, yeah, just get that inner peace, find your place of peace. That's where your strength is. Mm. Know who you are, find out who you are if you're not there yet. Go and travel the world, do whatever you want. You know, find who you are, and make that your place of strength, and then face the world being certain of yourself and who you are and what you want. And draw on others around you, family, friends. They're your supports. God's put them there to keep you going and to help you in hard times. Draw on them, but also be sure of who you are.
I like that. Thank you. Well, Glyn.
Thanks.
Thank you very, very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Ladies and gents, thank you very much for watching. And once again, this is Mr. Glyn Iliffe, and I'm Empowery. And stay tuned.